Over the next 25 or so minutes, Mark is going to talk to you a little bit about how he got into the beer business and share lessons from building his lager-focused craft brewery in Detroit over the last 20 or so years, and explain kind of how he's pivoted in the way that he brews, in the way that he's branded his products, and in some of the ways that he goes to market now and some of his strategies. So, Mark, take it away.
Hi, Mark Reith with Atwater Brewery. We have a little saying around here. It goes something like this. We drink all we can, then sell the rest. But it's not just our credo, it's how we work. See, we make enough beer for everyone, but not just any beer. Delicious handcrafted beers that don't taste like mountain urine from Sasquatch. Tasty beers for every taste. Brewed and bottled right here in Detroit. So don't worry. Even though these are the words we live by, no one could drink that much beer. Or could we?
All right. Well, afternoon. I know that you guys are getting a little tired. I know there's a break coming up. There's nothing better than being a presenter right before a break. So appreciate that, and it's all good. So that was our little video. That was one that we had made a few years back, and we're going to show you another one and kind of how we've evolved. We talk about nimble pivots. That really has a lot to do with what we're talking about today. So that was a fun video, something that we really enjoyed. If you can't have fun in the beer business, drop back and punt. I mean, that's really what that comes down to. So I appreciate your time. I want to one thing that I wanted to touch base on real quick was those Ryan guys. Those guys are kick-ass. I mean, they're doing some really good stuff. A lot of similarities. I'm sitting back there listening to what they have to say and their passion and their story. And that's what it comes down to. Everybody that we've been talking to today, who's been talking up here, has got their story, right? So if you're starting out right now, craft that story and make sure that it is ironclad and make it real. So I just want to kind of reiterate that from them. One of the things that I'm going to talk about, the reason I have my phone out here is because my memory is terrible. But our story, our story, there's two reasons. We're a little unique because I actually ended up purchasing this brewery, so I did not find or found Atwater. What I did is have the passion for it, and then was able to find the brewery, invest in it, and then I was able and lucky enough to convince 5 banks to lend me money back when you could fog a mirror and get that done, and was able to raise enough capital to get that done. I'm going to read you our mantra before we get going. Kind of tells a lot about who we are. We make the kind of beer that we love, unapologetic craft lagers and ales brewed with Detroit pride for people who enjoy a great tasting beer. We're not seeking the approval of anyone else. We're just a group of hardworking, beer-loving folks that get to bottle our enthusiasm every day and share it with the world. This is part of our new rebranding that we just got involved with. That's why I read it. We just put it up on our wall at the brewery, so we're pretty excited about that. So the story on the brewery was founded in 1997 right across from the old Stroh Brewery headquarters. The whole reason for the original owners to recreate this was to bring back the Stroh's Bohemian Lager that was once made in Detroit. Not many people know that they consider Detroit the Motor City, but it was actually 40 production breweries at one point, pre-Prohibition, very similar to what we just talked about Cincinnati. So very cool kind of collaboration there. We had a very dynamic German population as well. Bernard Stroh came over in the mid-1800s and started brewing his Stroh's Bohemian Lager. So that's kind of the whole reason and the premise for Atwater coming to fruition. The original owners ended up buying a Casper Schultz brew house from Chicago. There was a convention going on. They went there and bought it, shipped it to Detroit, and that's where it all started. So that's a little bit of the history of the brewery. We're now in 24 states, 3 countries. We're trying to carry on that long heritage of the breweries that were before us in Detroit. So one of our new mantras now, and I'll get into the reason why, our logo said brewed in Detroit. What we did is we changed it to born in Detroit, raised everywhere. A lot of that has to do with our logo. Our logo has a what we call as the Brewed in Detroit guy, hard hat on, raising a beer after a hard day's work. We're hardworking people, hardworking beer. That's kind of that concept of it. And as we continue to grow and we have more locations, we had to change and pivot and say instead of Brewed in Detroit, which now we're going to have multiple locations, that's why we changed that. So a little bit about me, my background. My passion for beer started when I was living in Boston. I have an automotive background from Detroit, which probably makes a lot of sense. But I was living out in Boston, started drinking the Boston Lager, and fell in love with it immediately. That was in the late 80s and early 90s. I started homebrewing. The cool story about the homebrew is that I was living in an all-girls college. I don't want to really get into that, but it's some pretty good humor. So it was me, my other roommate, it was Mark and 500 girls. And so what a better idea than to start brewing beer and serving it to the co-eds. And it actually worked. So it's a pretty funny story. The cool part of that is I met my wife there too, so that was kind of cool. So that's where it all started for me. I ended up moving back to Detroit. The whole reason for moving back is I wanted to start a business. I moved back in 1997 when Atwater opened up, walked in there, tasted the liquid, said, all right, I found my business. I got to figure out how to do it. So I ended up investing in 2002, and then I ended up buying them out in 2005, and then rebranded. So kind of brought back that original heritage that was going on in 97. So just a little bit, some details on our beers right now. Our Dirty Blonde Vanilla Java Porter are 2 flagship beers. They represent about 45% of our overall sales. That happened after the fact, and we'll kind of get into that in a little bit about how we had to kind of take a look at our German lager brewing heritage and tweak that to our specialty boutique ales. So really, some of the significant changes that I just kind of mentioned right now is that we were known as a German lager brewery, and very, very proud of that heritage. But we noticed that we had to diversify our product portfolio, so we ended up doing that and tweaking some of our significant ales that we made over the past few years. So the other one that we did was changing our logo. Our original logo that we had was a hand. So anybody that says they're from Michigan, Detroit's here. So that was our original logo. We changed it to the one that you see up on the screen right now. That instead of Michigan, and here we are in Detroit, that's very Detroit-centric. We wanted to really localize our slogan too. So it actually, the immediate and long-term impact was pretty substantial once we did that. You want to evolve without losing your identity. So right now, what we're all trying to figure out with a crowded marketplace, limited shelf space, is how do you evolve and how do you stay relevant to the consumers without losing your identity. And that's what we're really trying to do right now. Some of the things we're doing is we're playing with our lagers. Our Tunnel Ram, for example, is an Imperial Bock. We're very proud of that beer. And so those are things that we're trying to do to stay relevant with the customer base out there, give them unique offerings in the lager space along with our boutique ales. Some of the things that we've done, kind of gone against the grain with our other location that brought some relevance is our Vanilla Java Porter, our Decadent Dark Chocolate Ale, and our new Wango, which is a mango wheat. So we like to do a little bit of both. We don't want to be everything, but we also want to stay true to who we are, yet be relevant to the consumers as we move forward. We also did a new rebranding approach. I got another video right now that we're going to show you that gives you a little bit of idea of the first videos that we've done and now what we just did most recently. Thanks, appreciate it, appreciate it. So the rebranding approach, we took a good 6 to 8 months, threw a bunch of ideas on the table, and this one really came up. We did one brand with this. You saw Rocco on there. Tony Rocco is a local Detroit artist. Worked on the line at Ford Motor Company, and has more recently worked with some pretty dynamic people across the country and the world, actually, on some projects. He did one beer for us, and we're like, well, that's pretty cool. And as we thought about doing a retweak and a rebrand of all of our packaging, we said, well, why don't we just use him? I mean, that's a great idea. So what we did is we said, okay, we're going to do this over about a 4-month period of time and start rebranding all of our packages. And so he's a caricature artist, so you can obviously see there's 6 of them right there. So that, it had to stick within what he wanted to do as well. So you're dealing with an artist, and we're also dealing with the consumer demand and us trying to push this to market. So it's been a challenge, to say the least, but it's been very, very rewarding. We're very happy with what he's done. So what he does is we give him an idea, he sketches it out, we approve it, then he goes to print, and then we have the final result, and that's about anywhere between a 4 and a 6 week process. In the next 3 weeks, we'll have all of our lineup done. It's 12 package lineups done. We'll have probably another 6 months of rebranding after that. But really what we wanted to do is stay relevant. Art is very important, the art of brewing, so we thought it was really key to kind of connect those dots. And so far we're really excited about it, but it's not easy. It is very, very difficult. It's time consuming and expensive. So before you do it, make sure you take a lot of time, energy, focus groups to make sure you're doing the right thing. So one of the things we wanted to make sure is we incorporate some discoverables in there, the Detroit skyline, our map, some of the things that are very unique to us as well. One of the things that Chris and I were talking about, he wanted me to elaborate on, was one of our expansion items is, we're in 24 states. What does that mean? Where do we want to go? What do we want to do differently? And some of the things that we're pivoting on is getting closer to our customer. So we are going to be brewing in Austin, Texas. One of the things we wanted to do is to have a Southwest production facility. We decided not to do that on our own. So we have a collaborative facility that we'll be making a couple of different brands out of. So why build 2 production facilities when you can build one? And we're very active, involved in that process. And in March of next year, we're going to be brewing in Austin. We're really fired up about it. Part of that is we're not trying to be a Texas brewery. We're not trying to be an Austin brewery. We're a Detroit brewery brewing in Austin, trying to be part of that culture, part of that community. We're going to make 2 very unique beers for that marketplace as well, and then also brew our core items there. So I think that's very important. You want to be transparent to your customers, to your retailers, to make sure they understand what you're trying to accomplish. Going national, so our goal is to go national, but that doesn't mean that we have to be in every state. We look at each market individually. We don't look at each market on a contiguous basis. We look at opportunity markets. That's why we jumped all the way to Texas instead of connecting the dots on the way too. We want to go to a craft-savvy market. That's very important to us. One that has a great opportunity to grow, as Texas did when we entered it, for example. We also have an export strategy with we're in Canada, which is 9 iron right from our brewery to Ontario, so that's why we're there. We're shipping to Peru and some to Germany right now. So we're just getting involved in the export strategy, but I do see in the next 5 years, probably 20% of our business will be overseas with the opportunity that we're seeing. Distribution changes. We've talked a lot about it today. I don't want to reemphasize it, but it's extremely important. The Rheingeist guys were able to grow at their rate. They self-distributed in 3 years. Look at what they're doing. I mean, it's phenomenal. It's tremendous. It's outstanding. One of the things in another slide, as I mentioned that, I said if you're starting out, I would highly recommend, if you can self-distribute, do it. You learn a lot about your customer base, yourself as a brewery, entrance to market, all those kinds of things. So access to market is very, very concerning right now. What does that mean? Well, I think that the key is you have to produce the highest quality product possible. End of discussion. You have to have that. Take your time, get a lab, make sure that everything is absolutely perfect before it leaves your facility. Retailers will come, customers will come, and your distributors will be seeking out So there's always going to be access to market. Yes, it's constrained right now, but it's still there. New market opportunities. So when we go into a new market, for example, we just launched Georgia. It took us 2.5 years to study that market. We go in ourselves, do a market study before we even talk to distributors. We find out if that's a positive market for us to go into. We take a lot of time doing that. Then we meet with our distributors. We sample the products. We invite them to the brewery. And it's like a marriage. You got to understand before you get into it. You never know. It's an 80-20 rule. You keep working on it. We've pulled out of markets before. We've retrenched. And that's just natural. I think everybody in this room has experienced that as well. That's very important. Stepping back and evaluating. That's very important. It's difficult, but you have to reflect. Our brewery was commissioned in '97. We're going to have our 20-year anniversary next year. It's my 11th year anniversary of me owning the facility, but the brewery's been around for 20 years. And you have to step back. And we don't want to. One of the things I want to talk about is, change for the sake of change is not a good strategy. You don't want to chase every new specialty item that's out there and jump into that category. So it's a real fine line on how you do that. You don't want to miss the next great category. You don't want to be behind it. One thing I did learn a long time ago when I was with Toyota is that you don't have to be the first to market, but you should be the best. And that's extremely important. I would much rather understand the market a little bit more than being the first one out and fail. It's just my personal on that. I really think it's a huge topic. So we want to study the market, and we can be nimble enough to make quick decisions. That's the key. So you don't want to study too long. So that's the big X factor there. Industry concerns, stuff that we've all talked about. Increased competition is always there. Which market do you go into? What products do you go into with? Do you go with all of your items? Do you go with just your core? Do you one seasonal? Do you do all your seasonals? Very important. So you got to stay relevant, and how do you do that? So we focused on that with our rebranding approach and our package formats. Those are the two keys that we've done over the last couple of years. We've also entered the craft spirit market. The whole reason we're doing that, we have Atwater Spirits. We're doing that. We have similar names. So we have a Dirty Blonde vodka along with our Dirty Blonde beer. So we want to be able to sell more beer because we're in the craft spirit market. And what we've also done is we've started a beer garden tap house project. So we have our main plant with a tap house. We have another one in Metro Detroit that we converted a church into. And it's an amazing location. I've always wanted to do a German-style beer garden. We do that there. And then we're doing one in Grand Rapids. So we'll have 3 separate tap rooms with more to come, plus our Austin facility that we're going to have as well. So we want to get closer to our customer, stay relevant, don't lose your identity. Need to pivot, one of the things we talked about. It really depends where you want to be in the future. So I always ask that, where do you want to be? What do you want to be today? Do you want to be a brew pub, a nano, a production facility? And where do you want to be in 5 to 10 years? You got to answer that now. Don't wait 5 or 10 years. Answer that question now, where you want to be, craft your strategy, and go. Also, I don't know if anybody's talked about this yet today, but know what your exit strategy or your succession plan is too. Know it early on. That'll help you craft your strategy as well. Like I said, our rebranding, our packaging formats, our collaborative brewery project, our beer garden tap houses, our unique offerings to off-premise chains that we've done too as well. Those are all things that we've done to do some quick pivots over the last couple of years. So that's it. Don't be left behind. Instead, perfect your craft, and I can't emphasize that enough. Have the best product out there. Have your passion. Complete your culture in your own house, and there's plenty of room to grow still. So thanks for your time, guys. Appreciate it. So, yep.
So we got time for a couple questions here. We talked a lot about the different changes that you guys have made, rebranding. We see it there. But even before those changes, I'm sure you guys have constantly evaluated the business and thought of areas where you could improve. What's been the most significant change do you feel that you guys have made since you took over the business? And what was the thought process when you were going through the decision to actually make a change to the business?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it a little bit. The main one was when I first took over the brewery, we made 4 lagers. And I'll never forget our first bottling run. We had 4 pallets of our Atwater Hell, and then I said, all right, how the hell am I going to sell this? And that's reality at that point. So we were a little bit ahead of the curve on that one, and before the chain placements, and Michigan's a huge chain market. So we had to change fairly quickly on our product lineup, and so that's what we did. And we came out with a couple of ales, brought in a cold strain, and made those 2 products. And those were very difficult to do because you have an identity and you feel like, all right, we're going to be a craft lager brewery, and all of a sudden our 2 best-selling beers are ales. So it was difficult to do, but it was a decision that was ultimately the best one that we made.
Right now, a craft lager brewery would be a great play.
We're still here. I love the session thing. We've been, we haven't gone anywhere. So
yeah. You talked about going national, just kind of the markets that you look at. How do you assess sort of new market opportunities, and what does your launch strategy look like when you go to those new markets?
Yeah, we touched on that a little bit. What we do is we go into a market first, and we talk to retailers. We go to bars. We buy beers. We hang out. We see who's in the marketplace as well. And what we want to do is we don't want to go into a crowded marketplace.
Aren't they all crowded now?
Well, there's opportunities. There's still opportunities out there. I think, sure, there's 4,500 breweries, sure. But look at the Rheingeist guys. Look what they did 3 years ago. I mean, how many breweries were in Cincinnati? They had the forethought to go in there. And I think that's the key, is we go into a marketplace that's not crowded with over 200 local breweries. That gives us an opportunity. The craft market share is between 8 and 12%. So we know that we have an opportunity there, and we also see what's selling in that marketplace and see how our brands complement.
Right. You talked about the idea of, not feeling like you need to pivot, but how do you really identify when it is time to make a change, whether it's a rebrand? Is it just a gut feeling? Are there sales metrics that you look at? I mean, what really drives an entrepreneur like yourself to come to the conclusion of the realization that, hey, it's time to mix things up?
Yeah, one of our mantras too is we say we want to bring Detroit everywhere, and that, once again, that doesn't mean that we have to be in every state. But I think that you have to have a goal. You're just going to be flailing in the wind if you don't have that goal. And our goal is to be national and international. And but you have to do it with a strategy that works. So this year our strategy entailed 3 new markets, and we worked on that a couple of years ago. We knew that in 2016 we only wanted to go into 3 new markets. So we had to go find out where those 3 were, because we knew that as our growth strategy and our capacity increased, that's all we could do. So our forethought is, we know we're going into 2 markets in 2017 and maybe 1 in 2018, and that's what we're going to do. Will it change? Sure, you have to change, but you got to have that strategy and that plan, and you got to back into it. So we always look at our capacity first. We look at our CapEx spend, and then we look at what our sales goals are, and they all have to mesh. And something's got to give a lot of the times.
I mean, you are looking pretty far down the road for a lot of these decisions, it seems.
Yeah, we are. We change those because you have to, but you have to have, like I said, I can't stress it enough. I think that some of the decisions that we made over the last 3 years, we didn't have a good enough plan, and we made mistakes. We grew 68% in 2014, and we said, well, it's going to continue that way. Well, we grew 25% last year, but we increased our capacity based on that 68% growth.
Right.
So, that's when you take a step back and you got to say, all right, where do we want to go over the next couple of years, and let's be more realistic about our growth plan.
Right. It can be tough to see so far down the road, though. So how do you guys start to forecast, what lies ahead in your future, and how would you recommend folks here today begin that sort of forecasting process? Yeah,
well, the biggest problem with that is it's changing every month. I mean, you think you know what the market's doing, and then all of a sudden you throw your hands up and say, what? But you set the metrics. Like, metrics are very important. So you take a look at what the craft is doing, and then we take a look at each market and what the craft percentage is in each market, and then how many entries are in there. So we kind of do that analysis, and that's how we determine which market we want to go into. But if you're a startup right now, or if you're a newer brewery and you don't know if you're to go into a market, it's very difficult right now. Like you said, isn't it crowded everywhere?
Right.
There's still opportunity, though.
Right. Well, I think there's opportunity for us to get a coffee and a beer.
Sure.
What do you say?
Let's do it.
Mark, thank you.
All right, Prost. Thanks, babe.